Buenas tardes. Hola a todas, hola a todos. Muchas gracias por la invitación y muchísimas gracias por la hospitalidad. Muy apreciado. Très apprécié. So as Arnaud was saying, today I'm going to give you a glimpse of the NFB. So the NFB is a federal agency based all over Canada in 8 cities with 8 studios from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast and to the North Territories. There's around 400 people working at the NFB, and if you count in the creators, the makers, the technologists, it's around probably all the time 1,050. 1,050 people. So we're going to talk a little more about the NFB afterwards. So I'm from the Interactive Studio. I studied political science and did my master's studies studying emergence in open and complex system theory. That was in 1995. So it was also the year where the music industry was very burgeoning with Napsters and all this era, and it sucked me in. So since that time, I've been fascinated by interactive capacities, stories. I started my career more in the music industry, but ended up early 2000 at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation on a special projects dealing with live shows, internet live shows, radio, and all that stuff, so very early on. I'm at the NFB since 2013 as a producer, and since 2019 as the executive producer of the Interactive Studio. So this is us. The Interactive Studio is basically 11 of us, producers, administrators, coordinators, working closely with teams of creators to make the project come alive and meet its public. We produce we have in production every year about 15 to 20 projects at different stage of production. We finance 100% most of those projects, but around like 30, depending on the years, anywhere from 20 to 40% of the projects are done in co-production or in partnership, and I'm gonna go deeper into that afterwards. So that's what you need to know for now. So we're producers, but we're also distributors. And we go in all kind of fields. We consider ourselves as techno-agnostic. So we don't care that much about technology. We care about the story and the experience even most. This is one type of project we do. So it's a project a web project, web mobile that you can play on the computer, on a tablet, on a phone. It's called Brainstream. It was by Caroline Robert. This is Caroline testing the project at IDFA. It was launched at IDFA this November. So this is a relatively, for us, small project. It took us 18 months from the original idea to open to the public, and it's now touring in different festivals in the world, and still pretty much alive on the web as far as people going in. This is a different kind of project. This is a more ambitious one. It's a XR installation, and it will also be a VR on the stores eventually. This is opening in November in Berlin. So this is a full-grown co-production we did with Schnelle Bunte Bilder. They're creative people based in Berlin that we onboarded as co-producer. So they got financed by the Median Board in Berlin-Brandenburg. And we brought in most of the other money and all the resources and stuff like that. So it's a AI-driven project about Noam Chomsky. It's a conversation, a playful conversation with 4 people at a time in an installation. So that's one of the big projects in the studio at the moment. And we'll see probably there's going to be a mobile version of the project, but far in the future when all the tour is done and the VR is released on the store. So that gives you an idea of the type of project we do. We also do pure installation projects. So that's an installation, that's a photo dating for just before me leaving here. So it's opening soon at the Botanical Garden in Montreal. This one will lead us to the rest of the presentation. So this is a partnership with the Botanical Garden. So it's 50-50 investment by them and us. It's gonna be in the Botanical Garden for 7 years. So that shifts the way you build something. It has to be strong, it has to be very durable. And because it's a project about the environment, every material is also biodegradable over a period of 15 and more. So that's all the kind of things we take into consideration. And this project is about, there's another part of that project, 1 kilometer from where that stands in the Botanical Garden, where sensors are planted in trees and land, and all the data is based in the infrastructure. And everything you will see eventually, the lights, everything will be moving in some way, is an acceleration of the plant's life cycle. So this is a very different project, but still very like many projects we do. This is a new kind of project that we do more and more. It's a pure R&D project, so there's no expectation to have a work after that. It's a partnership we did with D-Box, which is a company who do seats for cinema, vibrating seats. So we use haptic technology, which the vibrating capacity of devices like the Quest and the controllers in the Quest and the PlayStation controller. And the partnership with the industry enterprises, they gave us access to the digital library of vibration. And we just trying to figure out what creators can do about that. And the end result are basically papers we want to publish in collaboration with them to help creators to take haptic technology into consideration when creating an experience. So today, I want to share with you 2 projects. One of the project is Plastisapiens. It's not as much the project I'm going to talk about, but more the structure of it, how we created that project that stems from 2 young creators that were recruited and found through that project. So Miri Shekanovic, Edith Jorish. One is Israeli and the other is Canadian, both of Israeli origin, but that's pure hazard. It wasn't planned for. And so it's their first VR. You can see it here. We joined them with DPT, which is one of the major creative studio in Montreal. Because it's their first project, it was very important for us to not let them go alone, but really pair them with top-of-the-line VR creators. It's a simple VR. Oh yeah, the last guy, the Ori, who's the musician based in Israel and also a co-producer in the structure I'm gonna go into afterwards. So the project was launched at Tribeca in the New Voice competition. So I told you, as a producer and a distributor, sometimes what we do is we give a context to a project, a VR project, or whatever the project. So we decided for the distribution of it to build a full-grown installation where people would go in, feel the subject, and slowly immerse before actually being immersed in the goggles. This is a photo I took yesterday, here, just down there. And this is the team. So usually this is just the installation team. The VR team wasn't in Tribeca. So it stems from an initiative that's called New Identities. The reason it's called New Identities is because it's one of the programming line of our studio at the time, which is really about identities in the 21st century. With everything going on, how is it changing our identities? Plastisapiens is one expression of it. There's 3 other expressions of it. So the story of how we build. We were put in contact with those 2 guys, Nir and Tal, by the embassy, Israeli embassy in Canada. They were looking for something very specific. They were looking for expertise in VR making. So they approached us because we have produced so far more than 30 VR pieces all over the different studios. And they really approached us like that. Like, we want your knowledge to be transferred to our creator community in Israel, mainly Tel Aviv and Haifa. So we also decided, so their focus was really clear, our focus, and what we were gaining is, since a couple of years, we did world initiative to identify emerging talent with what a project we call Haiku, Interactive Haiku, and very, very short, both with Arte, and the second one with IDFA. So there were really projects to help us identify new emerging talent. And in Israel, in Tel Aviv University, every time we call out for projects, we always find pretty amazing candidate and creator, mastering both the programming and the creativity or the artistic skills, which is the kind of profile we're always looking for, and we're also trying to push its emergence by different kinds of initiatives. So for us, like finding new talent, for them, getting new expertise into the ecosystem of creation. So it took us about a year, like many meetings, and we brought in four partners from Canada. They brought in 2 other partners from Israel. They were both representative of 2 funds. I'm gonna go deeper into that after, the Makor Foundation and the Gesher Foundation. Based in Israel. So the usual, when you try to put something together and have project coming out of that, like make people spend time together, take a beer together, make mistake together, and all that stuff. So we had a trip, 10-day trip in Tel Aviv and Haifa during the festival in October. So during those trips, we don't only made them work together, but we also work with partners in Tel Aviv to have them meet university professors who are exploring VR capacities. This is Miri. I won't remember the name of the guy, but he's a university professor that's specialized in perception and how to trick perception with VR. So that was very useful for our work in Plastisapiens. And at some point, at this time, we had 12 teams of creators. So 6 from Canada, 6 from Israel. And we were just like opening up like every possibility. Some teams formed during that trip, some teams broke during that trip, but we were really trying to create a group of Israeli and Canadian. And then in November, we brought them to Montreal, and we toured the scene to meet the makers. And mostly important, most of those people have never produced a VR before and had never done a co-production before. So we organized with the Canadian Media Fund a full-grown session of what to take into consideration when you want to co-produce. So how do you structure the finance, the legal stuff, really the administration and legal and rights management and budget structure and all sorts of other specifics about co-production. And at the end of that trip, which lasted also somewhere around 10 days, they pitched for a second time. This is the first version of the visual of the project that you can see Miri and Edith pitching. And after that, there was, we had like 12 pitch, and we selected 4, based on criteria I won't go into at the moment. So this is what I want to show you. So this was the structure. So before going into production and distribution, the downline is really the people who made the initiative possible. So Canadian Media Fund, really early on, we had an agreement with them to try something new. So not only do the usual funding, you submit your proposal, there's a jury selecting. So it was something very new for them to try to achieve that with Israel, but with any country. Like sometimes we work together very closely. We're both Canadian agency and we have the same, we belong to the same minister. In Israel, it was the Makor Foundation for this project. 2 other projects, it was the Gesha Foundation, and they're supported by the Israeli, both funds are supported by the Israeli Film Council and the Ministry of Culture and Sport. So those who paid for moving the people around and organizing are really those 5 organizations, well 6, because there's the Makor and the Gesher, who financed all of that. And then after the 4 projects were selected, every project after the session I was talking about was really closely guided by us, mostly, and also the people at the CMF to do a viable structure to produce the VR piece. We gave them like clear parameters as far as the piece has to have a certain length. You cannot go in a complicated interaction design. It has to be like a simple interaction. No dependency to any database, no dependency to internet. So it had to be an autonomous VR experience. That you can just download on the helmet and live in the helmet. This was very important because this is where in a co-production you control all the spillovers, if I can say. And then once that was done, the people that were selected, they became producers. So DPT is not only the creative studio but also a co-producer in the mix. So they got funding from the CMF. Like 50% of the funding went directly to DPT. We brought in 35% in this project, and the rest, 15%, was La Libella, who got funded by the Makor Foundation. But once they were selected, they automatically got the funds. Yeah, so that's it for the moment. I'm gonna switch to the other project. Just a second. Okay, so the next project is a different angle to another project called The Melody of Laugh. And it's a project where at the very beginning we know we were getting involved in something very new that we didn't master. And well, basically we didn't know what we were doing, but we wanted to do it for a reason. At that time, it was the emergence of a big AI hub in Montreal. So it was a wish to position Montreal strategically on the international scene as a center for research and applied engineering into artificial intelligence. So we just decided to hop on the train and started talking with the Arts Council of Montreal, us, of course, and Quartier des Spectacles, which is the cultural district in Montreal. There's a couple of cultural districts, but they are in charge of public places in the art of the Montreal city. And the fourth partner was the most important partner. It was Element AI. It was a company, a very important company at the beginning of this burst. That's 4 years ago. And we created a residency. So each of the three partners, the Arts Council, the Cultural District, and us, we put in 15,000 Canadian each. And Element AI brought in 200 hours of AI architects that the people that were going to be selected could have access to. So that's what we built. We didn't have a project at the moment, so we did a call for project and built a jury and selected one project that was not called The Melody of Laugh at the time. And at some point, what happened just at the beginning of the pandemic is that Element AI got bought by an American company, ServiceNow. But we had taken into consideration that possibility, so all the contract guaranteed us access to the AI models that were developed during the residency, all the database, which is very crucial when you work with AI. And also like anything, well, nothing happened, so but we had the rights if something would have come out of the residency, so nothing came out of the residency. But we had like an idea that we were now, it was possible to work creatively with AI at that time. That's 2019. Now at this point, like we knew the team, there was 3 people. But we ended up working just with one of them. The reason why is that the project changed its shape. At the beginning, there was the residency with the partners, so you had the cultural district. And because it was at the beginning of the pandemic, we decided to switch the format. So it was to be an installation, outdoor installation in public space. So in 2019, it didn't make sense to do that. So we asked the creators if they wanted to shift to more like a web-based experience. One of them said yes. The 2 others, that wasn't their turf, so they just opt out. And now this is where we are right now. We're in the second phase of development. And one key thing to the project is this guy. So this is how we select creators most of the time we work with, except when we're with emerging artists as the previous example. But when we go into those very hazardous projects, we need to be in confidence. We need to be in trust with the creator to make sure that you will understand that it's a long process, it's a hard process, you don't master everything. So usually, and you're amazing creator, of course. And that's also. So this is Etienne Paquette. He's like we've worked with him 3 times before in the past. In 2013, he was the first artist we worked with using artificial intelligence in a very small matter. So he had already done something very small with this kind of technology. And this was a piece not put out in Montreal in 2017 at this, in the center of the city, where basically there was sensors everywhere capturing the city sounds, the city soundscape, and transforming it through different process and generic approaches. And you would go into that tube and just scream. And then those 5 pipes would become musical instruments. People could sing, people even threw things into the tube. So we knew Etienne good enough we were trusting him to work with the AI and not be very patient, basically, as a creator, and making sure that he was giving space to the AI people. So I'm just going to give you a little context of the project. So we don't know what the project will look like yet. We know its artistic direction, and we know its intention. And this is very important for us when going into a project. We need to have like a clear intention. So one of Etienne's strength is all his project stems from him. He's never observing something outside of him. And for us, it's a very good quality. It's something you live. So when he approached us after all the previous story, he said, okay, I'm good to go. I want to do this project. I want to work with AI. I know it's going to be a long process, but can I tell you about my grandmother? So of course, as a producer, of course, like let's. And at that time, during like 2019, her grandmother, she was turned 100 years, and she lost the capacity to talk. But since their very early relation, they laugh a lot. And if you know Etienne, he's always laughing. He's really like a laughing guy. Like he laughs for any reason. So it's really normal for him to laugh. And one thing he noticed is that during that period, the only thing that was connecting him to his grandmother was the laughing. But they really felt together when they were laughing together. And then he said, I think there's a story there. I think there's an experience I can find in there somewhere about the memories. Because for me, laughing with my grandmother brings back memories of my early childhood and all through my life. So we ask a question: can a life be told in a few laughs? And this is what we're exploring right now. But we're exploring it with AI. So we've enlarged the team. The first thing we needed to do is what's going to be the sensibility of the experience? How is it going to look? Because it's not supposed to be a very visual experience, but very a sound-based experience, and maybe a vibration-based experience also, because it makes sense with laugh. So going back to the other project I was telling you about. So we brought in Karine Calif. She's the artistic director. So all of the drawings and the image you see are from her. But most importantly, we paired with the hub of artificial intelligence in Montreal, which is called MILA. It's coordinated between all the 4 universities in Montreal. So we onboarded Gauthier Guidel. He's a researcher. He works with different machine learning processes. Elif was the guy who was working with Etienne when he was at Element AI. He's into AI, into the health. He works with hospital doctors and people. So laughing and healing is his thing. And Corey Mathewson is also Mila, but he's Google Brain. So we have those three people working with us. What they provide us is because they're researcher, they have access to all the machine learning processes computer power. Because when you're training an AI model, it takes lots of computer power. So for us, it's at no cost. But for the partnership, that's what they bring in. Not only their knowledge and their participation in creation, but they provide us all the computing power we need to work with that project. And that's key if you want to do something in artificial intelligence. And of course, at the NFB, there's R&D team, and two of the engineers are pretty sound in AI. So they're helping us putting all the infrastructure. So we know the intention of the project, we know the feeling of it, and now we're really in that stage and almost completed, where we work on the back end of it. So the project needs to be stable. All the technology behind it needs to be stable, because when you'll go into the experience, if that's not stable, the experience will crumble. It has to be very fit. So we spend lots of time doing that. And the way Etienne and those three guys work together is very important in making that happen. I think it was mentioned in a couple conference. They don't speak the same language. Like if you put a creator and a researcher, so when we build a project like that, very early on, we factor in and give time for them just to understand each other. If they're using the same word, are they saying the same thing? And all this process of making sure that the communication is at the same level is really, it lasted almost 6 months, just that, with like a weekly follow-up to make sure. And this is a couple of examples of what we ask Etienne to do. It's really to try to express graphically the core of its idea, the essence of it. So using action words for the AI programmers to really understand exactly what the AI needs to do. Because for technology, you have to be very specific. It's mathematics, so you have to be, so there's a couple of, and we work by hypothesis. So it's just an hypothesis when we share with the researchers. The benefit of working like that, it's a slow process, but already the project doesn't exist, and there's 2 scientific articles that have been published by those creators together, those AI people together in scientific magazines. So for us, it's value before there's even an end result into a project. And for the researcher, well, what it brings to them is a question they would have never asked themselves, because it's a creator that asks the question that they have to find the answer to. It provokes them and it brings them other perspective into their expertise. And this is another very appreciated value, so they tell us. So those are just example of hypothesis, and really like as I was saying, clear, simple, very synthesis way of telling what is it you want to create for the user when he's in the experience. So we ended up, after all that process, with this type of question. So it's the same question, but framed for the AI researcher. So that's what the output and all the exercise is about. And so this is what it looks like at the moment. So we use a generative model. So it's a computer learning by essay and errors, in a way, as is rewarded for his good essays and penalize for his bad essays. And we use images, but we transfer them into sound. So we associate sound to images. So this is a very important part of the work before moving forward in anything. And this is what I was talking about earlier on. So we feed the computer model with people at different stages of their life, different ages of their life. So if someone in the experience is old or young, the machine will generate projection of past laughs and projection of future laughs based on a laugh the person will share within the experience. I'm just going to give you an example. So we convert then the image into the sound and back into the sound. So I'm just going to give you, so what you're going to hear, there's going to be 3 laughs. It's not a human laughing. It's the machine laughing. And that's the in between the machine is capable of. So it may be abstract, but to us this was very important to, oh, hello dog, welcome. Yeah, you can sit. Yeah, so to us, before going to the emotional part of the experience, we needed to make sure that the intention and the will to work with AI was functioning very well. And I'm gonna end on those like key questions when you go into that type of project, or I would say any type of project. Once you've realized that all the back end and every technology is stable, then we move into exactly defining the final stage of what the experience for the user will be. And one thing very important at this stage, we're here now, it's really to defining the playground. So what I mean by that is making sure that it becomes very precise what the experience will be, what it will not be, what it will look like, and what it won't look like at this stage. And most importantly, the team is the people you saw, and now we're at the stage where we're gonna expand the team. So bring in game designers, programmers for the front end of the experience, and scenographers to design the installation. And creative technologists to program the models you're going to be facing. So we're at that stage where at the beginning I was talking about Etienne being very important to have him on board and be open. It's like, you know what you know. There's things you don't know, and there's things you don't know you don't know. And those are the most important ones when going into those projects. And there's ways to plan for that. So you factor in like contingency that are way more important than the usual. And one thing we do also, and maybe not possible for everyone, but because we're financed on a yearly basis, we're able to keep a reserve, like a provision, and move the project by iteration. And if we succeed at some point, or if we fail, we're able to inject other money or to abandon the project. Like there's a way we can do that. I don't think that will happen with that project. And the most important thing is really to listen to the other expertise. Sometimes you have a creator that can be very stubborn and really wanting to achieve his vision, but vision and technology have to go together, and sometimes technology kills the vision. Then the vision has to be built on that killing and give something else. And for us, the creator, it's really important that we have those discussions very early when we go into a project, because that when those big projects with high technology challenges, humility is really the key, because as I said at the very beginning, sometimes you don't know what you're doing, but it's okay. This is creation. Muchas gracias.
Thanks, Richard, for your talk. It's a pleasure always being with you, knowing from you, your wisdom. After the surreal moment of the laughing dog that we experienced here, I would like to ask you about basically if you can go deeper a little bit, talking about the NFB structure in terms maybe of key areas that you deal with, like animation, interactive, documentary, or education, for example. If you can give me a 5 cents of that.
Yeah, so the NFB, there's 8 studios at the NFB. 2 of those studios are animation driven. They have a national mandate, so they work with creators from all over Canada, and they're based both in Montreal, because in Montreal there's the big production center where we have all studios, capacity, green screen, and stuff like that, and the sound post-production and all. We have also cinemas, and about 2 cinemas to finish the films. The 2 other studios are the interactive studio, us, the French program based in Montreal, and the English program based in Vancouver. And all the other studios are regional studio. So you have the Atlantic, the Quebec, the Ontario, the Central Canada, and the BC Yukon studio. And they have the mandate to work on a regional basis. So they associate with creators, and they're really part of more like a provincial ecosystem than the national ecosystem. So that's, and there's, you mentioned, education is another group. They have their own project, and sometimes we collaborate a lot. They come in mid-projects when we, like the laughing projects I was talking, like it's too early to have them in. The Plastisapiens project, they're already working on it to try to present it into the classroom, so to build complementary material for education. Outside of that, there's a post-production department that we all work with in different capacities, and then the usual administration, financial, legal, that are very important and never to neglect, but that's the structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have another question. Let's say that I'm a Latin guy, for example, from Colombia, from Chile,
Oh, really?
and I have a dream. Yeah. In my case, my dream is to be able to produce eventually with the NFB. What kind of tips or guidelines or suggestions could you give us to this Colombian or Chilean guy in order to be able to produce eventually something with NFB?
Find a way to produce as much small project as you can, so you learn fast. And when you approach us, pretty much like the example I gave to Etienne, we know we're facing someone who's knowledgeable of what he can accomplish or she can accomplish and what she needs help for. Like, so that's usually the first thing I'm looking for, and most producers at the NFB are looking for, is that it's good to have an idea, but you have a minimum set of skills that will allow us to create a team around a creator. We did a project with an Israeli girl, pretty much like in that sense. So since we're a Canadian producer, the team has to be majority Canadian. But if a creator comes from abroad, he has to be able to be open enough. So he will work with Canadian in a large capacity. So that's the key. Like with the project I'm talking about, the creator, she pushed back most of the people we were bringing to her. So at some point we said, well, this was the deal. if you don't want to work with Canadian, we cannot finance the project. So that's the way to do it. Then after, it's conversation. Like I mentioned in Etienne's example, it's building trust. So exposure, many encounters, different contexts. Usually we're pretty slow to go in and to commit to a creator, except like I mentioned on the first example, where then the mindset is different. The mindset is to nurture new talent and give. So when we do international project like that, usually this is where we work more with people from Colombia or Chile.
Okay. So now we will open the conference to everyone who wants to participate or to make a question to our guest. Is there anyone in the public who want to ask something to Luis Richard Tremblay? Sí, tenemos a couple. Sara?
I just had a short question because I look at your projects and of course they are beautiful, but they tackle also different aspects. So it's an aspect of design, it's an aspect of technology, but also if we look at the last thing, we saw the connection between young generation and old generation and about understanding what happens at the points of some kind of a disability. So I was wondering, do you cooperate with cross-sector? Do you then include, I don't know, psychologists, anthropologists, or maybe in a case of the sound, someone who's really connected to other sectors? Thank you.
Yes, good question. Like we're at that stage right now. Usually a project like that will bring in 1 to 5 consultant specialists in different disciplines, depending on where the team wants to be. And sometimes when education come in, also there's a whole new sets of network that are being opened. Sometimes we give, this is one thing we'll do with the Melody of Laugh, is we pair with science people and we give them full access to the project. So privileged access to the project. We've done that a couple of times. So outside of the example, I was like, those are the creative team, but outside of that, it's just, usually they come at us, they've heard about the project some way or another, and they can I make your project a subject of my studies? And then we just, most of the time, we say yes.
Mm-hmm. I think we had one final question over there.
Hello, thank you for your conference. It was very interesting. Please tell, I think that I understood the vision of your organization, okay? You talk about that you are financing a lot of projects, a sound project, a VR project, but I didn't understand the mission of your organization. What are you looking for? What are you trying to do?
We're trying to explore new grammars in media making, basically, since the very early stage of the NFB. That's the mission, and that's what drives most people who work there, is really an exploratory territory where we're given the liberty because of the money, but not only just because of the money, because of the culture of the place. So it's really a space of exploration in all fields, animation, movies, and interaction, if we may sum it up to that, what we do. So that is it answering the question? Yeah. But it's really, and of course, that's the fun aspect of it, but there's the more official aspect of it, which is tell the stories of Canadians to Canadians and stories of Canadians to the world. So that's the more official version of it.
That's all.